The slap seared my cheeks so hard my vision went dark for a second. I, Kira Kai Ellington, stood in the middle of the City Hall atrium in a white dress that had taken 6 months to tailor, unable to believe what was happening. Behind the glass doors, guests were waiting. Soft music was playing. In front of me stood Mrs. Dolores Vance, my future mother-in-law, her face twisted with malice. "I'm telling you one last time," she hissed, gripping my elbow tightly. "Either you sign the condo over to Jeremy and pay for this entire wedding, or there will be no wedding. I'll tell my son everything about you. Do you think he won't believe his own mother?" 10 minutes remained until the ceremony, the moment I had dreamed of for 3 years, the moment I finally became Silas Vance's wife. "Mrs. Vance," my voice trembled, "that apartment, the 2-bedroom condo on River Street, is the only thing I have left from my mama. I can't give it away. And Silas and I are paying for the wedding together. You know that." "You raggedy gutter trash. Do you think I'd let my son marry the likes of you?" That was when she reared back and slapped me, right there in the lobby, in front of witnesses. I stumbled back, clutching my cheek, the humiliation crushing me. In that same second, the doors burst open and Silas Vance flew into the lobby. He saw my tear-stained face, his mother frozen with her hand still raised. "What are you doing?" I had never heard him scream like that. He grabbed his mother by the wrist, and she shrieked hysterically. "She's hunting us! She's hunting our family! Silas, son, she doesn't love you! She just wants your apartment, the residency!" Silas shoved her, not hard, but enough that she lost her balance and fell onto a bench. You raised a hand to your mother?" Mrs. Vance wailed. "Silas," I managed, "that apartment, the 2-bedroom condo on River Street, is the only thing I have left from my mama. I can't give it away. And Silas and I are paying for the wedding together. You know that." Silas turned slowly to his mother, who was instantly cooing, trying to change her tone. "Jeremy has nowhere to live. This one has 2 whole bedrooms. Why does she need so much space for herself?" "And this is my wife," Silas enunciated clearly. "In 10 minutes, she will be my wife. And if you, Mama, cannot accept that, you can leave." Mrs. Vance gasped with indignation. The security guard escorted her out as she screamed, "You'll regret this! You'll come crawling back!" Silas took my hand and led me toward the ceremony hall. We signed the papers and walked out, but almost no guests were left. My friend Ayana stood there, pale. "The reception is canceled," Silas repeated. "We were legally married, but I felt crushed." The wedding reception was canceled. Kira Kai Ellington and Silas Vance took a cab back to Kai's 2-bedroom condo on River Street, the very property his mother, Mrs. Dolores Vance, wanted to steal. In the quiet of the apartment, Kai finally began to explain the cruel origins of the condo. Before meeting Silas 3 years ago, her life had been relentlessly hard. Loss and debt. Her mama died of stage 4 cancer when Kai was 19. Kai was left alone with overwhelming grief and a massive loan for her mother's treatment that needed to be paid off. She didn't remember her father and had no other relatives. The struggle. Despite the hardship, Kai managed. She finished her degree in economics, worked her way up from assistant accountant to senior accountant at a construction firm, and paid off the loan. She renovated the condo herself, learning to live alone and asking no one for help. The condo was her hard-won sanctuary and the only legacy from her mother. Kai told Silas everything that happened, including Mrs. Vance's chilling demand and the slap. Silas held her, full of pain and determination. "She's not my mother anymore," Silas declared. "After what she did, that is unforgivable. A mama doesn't hit her daughter-in-law on her wedding day. A mama doesn't try to destroy her son's happiness. The workhorse. Silas confessed he realized his mother had always loved his slacker, younger brother, Jeremy Vance, more, and saw Silas as the workhorse. He spent his life trying to prove he was worth something to her. The vow. I realize I won't prove anything anymore. We'll get through this, Kai, without her, without any of them, Silas vowed. They celebrated their wedding simply, just the two of them, ordering sushi and exchanging rings again. Now, for real, I promise to love you, protect you, and be on your side always, Silas said. The following days were tense. Mrs. Vance, who wasn't one to silently accept defeat, didn't call Kai or Silas. This was more alarming than any screaming match. 2 weeks later, the silence was broken, not by Mrs. Vance, but by Silas's brother, Jeremy, and his wife, Mona. They unceremoniously pushed into the condo. "Nice place, right, Mona?" "Spacious," Jeremy said. Mona looked around, holding her phone as if ready to record. "Mama says you promised to help. You give us the apartment, we give you... Well, we'll think of something. Mama says if we solve this nicely, she'll forgive Silas." Kai, shaking with anger, threw the door open. "Get out! Both of you, now!" Mona flared up, calling Kai Miss High and Mighty and saying she should be grateful a family like theirs took her in. As they left, Mona managed to film the hallway and kitchen on her phone. Silas went pale when he returned, immediately calling Jeremy. "If you or your wife show up at my apartment without an invitation one more time, I will file a police report." He knew his mother was behind it. "Mother is egging them on, says you promised, that it's fair that you have extra space anyway." It's insane. The true war had begun. The war intensified 2 weeks after Jeremy and Mona's invasion. Mrs. Dolores Vance, silent since the wedding, had been planning a more insidious attack. A month after the wedding, Kai's boss, Ms. Price, a strict manager Kai had worked with for 6 years, called Kai into her office. Lying on the desk was an anonymous letter, printed on a standard sheet. The letter, a direct attempt at professional assassination, falsely stated that Kai was registered at a psychiatric ward, had a propensity for embezzlement, and demanded management check the accounting records for the last few years. "This is a lie," Kai said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Miss Price, who trusted Kai, hadn't run straight to the director, but a copy was sent to his name, forcing an audit. A chief accountant cannot work under suspicion. The audit lasted 2 weeks. Kai came to work feeling like she was going to an execution, enduring whispers and rumors that she was about to be fired. Naturally, the audit found nothing. Her records were spotless, and no psychiatric record existed. The director apologized, confirming the letter would be handed over to the police as a knowingly false report. The professional damage was done. Colleagues looked at Kai differently, with suspicion and curiosity. That evening, Kai told Silas Vance, "Your mother wrote a denunciation on me at work. I almost got fired." Silas left and returned 3 hours later with bruised knuckles. He had punched a wall after confronting his mother, who didn't deny it, claiming she was doing it for his own good because Kai had bewitched him. A month later, the harassment escalated into a legal attack. A court summons arrived in a regular envelope. The claim: Statement of claim for recovery of funds. Plaintiff: Mrs. Dolores Vance. The suit claimed Silas had given Kai $20,000 for apartment renovations before the wedding and demanded the return of this money as unjust enrichment due to the alleged dissolution of marriage. The lie. The claim was based on a complete lie. Kai and Silas were married, living together, and Silas never gave Kai that money. Silas, furious, agreed to hire a lawyer, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Gordon listened and immediately chuckled. Interesting movie. The suit has no grounds whatsoever. The marriage was not dissolved, the plaintiff wasn't the party who allegedly transferred the money, and there was no proof of the transfer. However, Mr. Gordon warned, "You'll win, but she'll fray your nerves. She'll drag out the process, file motions, demand expertise." While waiting for the court hearing, the harassment continued. Kai received a call from the police. A complaint had been filed against her by Jeremy Vance for threatening her with physical harm. The frame. Jeremy, lying, claimed Kai threatened to kill him for kicking him out of the condo. The defense. Kai, Silas, and Mr. Gordon went to the station. Mr. Gordon brought Ayanna as a witness who confirmed there were no threats, only demands to leave the premises. The outcome. The case was closed for lack of evidence. Jeremy received a warning for filing a false report. Kai was constantly on edge. What else will they invent? Every call made her heart race, and she was headed for an emotional collapse. Miss Price, her boss, noticed and offered compassion, but advised Kai to give her no fuel. The first court hearing for Mrs. Dolores Vance's $20,000 unjust enrichment lawsuit took place in mid-autumn. The courtroom was small and stuffy, but Mrs. Vance was dressed to the nines. Mr. Gordon, our lawyer, clearly and directly presented our case. He showed the marriage certificate confirming Kai and Silas were still married, eliminating the grounds for dissolution of marriage. He showed Silas's bank statements. No $20,000 transfer was ever made. Silas's affidavit confirmed he gave no money and had no financial claims against Kai. Mrs. Vance tried to object, claiming Silas gave her cash he'd saved for the wedding. The judge, a tired woman in her 40s, demanded proof. Mrs. Vance had none. The ruling was issued that same day. Suit dismissed, court costs awarded to the defendant. Mrs. Vance, refusing to accept defeat, jumped up and screamed, "This is unfair! She bribed everyone! The judge is corrupt!" Bailiffs escorted her out as she threatened to appeal. Mr. Gordon congratulated us. "Round 1 is yours. Round 2 will be the appeal." We couldn't forget the trauma of the day. A week after the trial, Silas went to his parents' house to pick up his remaining things. He returned late that night, pale as a sheet. Silas silently handed me his phone. On the screen were screenshots of a text conversation. "While Mother was in the bathroom, I grabbed her phone and I found this," he said. The chat was between Mrs. Vance and Jeremy Vance. The plan, spanning months, was all there. The goal? How to drive the broke heel out and get Silas back home. The attack? Need to drive her to the asylum, Mrs. Vance wrote. The theft? They discussed forging documents. "Maybe forge documents," Jeremy replied. "I have a lawyer friend says we can backdate a deed of gift." The contempt? "When will she just die? Sick of her, honestly." Jeremy wrote. "She's not my mother," Silas said finally in a hollow voice. "They wanted to forge documents for your apartment. They discussed how to drive you to a nervous breakdown." We gave the screenshots to Mr. Gordon. "This is serious. The plan to forge documents? That's criminal. Conspiracy to commit fraud. We can file charges." Silas, crying into my shoulder, asked me to decide. "It's your apartment, your life." I said, "Let's not do it yet. Keep it as an ace up our sleeve. If she continues, then we use it."
Mrs. Dolores Vance, unaware her entire criminal conspiracy was documented, attempted a final physical attack a week after her court appeal was denied. Kai Ellington, and Silas Vance knew they had to fight this to the end. Late one night, our doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Jeremy Vance and Mona. Jeremy held a duffel bag. Open up, Mona yelled, pounding on the door. We know you're home. Silas immediately walked to the door and refused to open it. Jeremy, what do you need? Silas asked. Jeremy said you'd forgive us, that we'd settle everything, Jeremy replied, believing his mother's lie that the court had decided Kai had to move out. Mama was wrong. Leave, Silas commanded. In response, Jeremy began kicking the door once, twice, a third time. The lock groaned but held. I had changed it after the wedding to a reinforced metal one. The wooden frame cracked. Mona squealed with delight. Jeremy's hand pushed through the gap, trying to reach the lock from the inside. Silas grabbed a baseball bat he kept in the closet. Call the police, Kai! He shouted. The police arrived fast, the precinct being only 2 blocks away. Police, freeze! A voice boomed. Jeremy and Mona were handcuffed right there on the landing. They were hauled off to the station, and the mangled doorframe was photographed as evidence. The damage was classified: intentional destruction of property plus attempted burglary and home invasion, a felony carrying 2 to 5 years. At the station, Jeremy crumbled under interrogation. He confessed that Mama said the apartment is ours now, and he believed her lie that the court decided Kai had to move out. The detective showed him the court ruling. Suit dismissed. The apartment belongs to Miss King. Kai, your mama lied to you and set you up. Now you're facing real time. When we returned home to the scattered splinters, I felt something snap inside me. I can't do this anymore, I told Silas. I can't live like this in fear, waiting for the next hit. We write a statement on Mother about those screenshots, about the plan to forge documents. Let her know we have something to answer with, Silas declared. He was ready to cut the tie completely. I looked up at him. Are you sure? She's your mother. She is the woman who gave birth to me and whom I no longer know. The mother I loved died, if she ever existed. We filed the police report that same day, with Mr. Gordon, our lawyer, drafting the document. The charges were immense: conspiracy to commit a crime, felony fraud, and extortion. The war was entering its decisive criminal phase, and we were not going to retreat anymore. The day of the trial for Jeremy Vance's attempted break-in arrived in late winter. The charge was a serious felony, intentional destruction of property, and attempted home invasion. Kyra Ellington and Silas Vance sat in the familiar, decaying courtroom. Jeremy looked pitiful, unshaven and gaunt in a wrinkled sweater. His wife, Mona, sat in the gallery, pointedly looking away from him. The public defender mumbled something weak about a family conflict. When given the floor, Jeremy suddenly turned to us. Cuss, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It was all Mama. She said the apartment was legally ours. He confessed he was a fool and believed her lie. The plea. The judge interrupted, and Jeremy lowered his head. Guilty. The sentence. He was sentenced to 2 years probation plus restitution for damages and court fees. Mona, outside the hall, caught up with us, hissing, "Happy now? Got what you wanted? My man is convicted." "Your man convicted himself," I answered calmly. "Mrs. Vance herself will soon stand trial for fraud and extortion, so I advise you to stay away from this family before it's too late." We immediately filed the criminal charges against Mrs. Dolores Vance. Our report, drafted with Mr. Gordon, was meticulous, citing the statutes and attaching the evidence. The screenshots, the chat log proving her plan to forge documents and drive Kyra to a nervous breakdown. The charges: conspiracy to commit a crime, felony fraud, and extortion. A week later, Mrs. Vance was called in for questioning. When the detective showed her the screenshots, she denied everything, screamed it was fake, and threatened to complain. Forensics, however, confirmed the authenticity of the messenger data. The case against her was moving to court. The lawyer friend who had promised to forge documents was also charged as an accomplice. The case against Mrs. Dolores Vance went to court in mid-spring. She was facing two serious charges: conspiracy to commit fraud and extortion. The co-conspirator, a shady notary who agreed to forge documents, was also charged. The trial was difficult and the tension was immense. Mrs. Vance, wearing the same burgundy dress as at the wedding, looked aged and hunched, visibly broken by the months of struggle. Defendant King, Vance, you are accused of planning to seize your daughter-in-law's property through deceit over a prolonged period, the judge stated. Mrs. Vance turned to her son, Silas Vance, who was present in the courtroom. She looked at him with pleading and hope, hoping he would intervene. "Son, tell them I didn't want anything bad. I'm your mother," she pleaded. The court asked Silas to approach the stand. This was the pivotal, painful moment where he had to completely break the tie to the woman who raised him. "This woman," Silas began slowly, weighing every word, "is indeed my mother. She gave birth to me, raised me, educated me." But he continued with chilling clarity. "But what she did to my wife, the harassment, false reports, attempt to steal her only inheritance, that is not motherly love. That is a crime, and I will not cover for her." He sat down, his final act of choosing his new family over his blood complete. Mrs. Vance stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks, yelling that he was a traitor. The verdict was read 3 hours later. Mrs. Dolores Vance found guilty on both counts. Sentence: 3 years probation, a fine of $10,000, and a restraining order prohibiting her from approaching the victim, Kai, closer than 50 yards. The judge's ruling meant that after 2 years of relentless torment, the legal war was finally over. I, Kyra Ellington, felt no triumph, only a huge, hollow emptiness. We won, but at what cost? Life gradually began to settle. Mrs. Vance didn't appear again, either afraid to violate the order or finally realize she had lost. Jeremy Vance, according to rumors, divorced Mona and moved back in with her mother, still unable to find a job. Silas and I began to build our life new, clean, without shadows of the past. We had paid a high price, but we stood firm. The criminal trial of Mrs. Dolores Vance had ended with a guilty verdict: 3 years probation, a fine of $10,000, and a restraining order. Though legally victorious, Kai Kellington felt only emptiness. They had won, but at what cost? Life slowly began to settle. Then, one evening, Langston, Silas's silent father, whom Kai hadn't seen since the wedding day chaos, appeared at the condo. He looked aged and defeated. "Kyra, I came to apologize for everything. For Dolores, for Jeremy, for myself," he said quietly. He confessed his part in the trauma. I was silent because I allowed her to do it. I knew she was planning, and I didn't stop it. Langston revealed he had been afraid of his wife his whole life. The tragic past. Langston confessed that Mrs. Vance was always like that. He disclosed that many years ago she had swindled an apartment from his first wife, using pressure and threats. He endured her tantrums for 40 years, only to realize he had lived his whole life under a heel. His choice. He finally left her, filing for divorce. "I looked at you and Silas, how you fight, how you don't give up. And I thought, and me? I lived my whole life under a heel." He was seeking forgiveness from his son for being silent and pitying himself. Silas, who had thought he hated his father for being silent,
only felt pity. That summer, fate gave Kai and Silas a final gift. Kai found out she was pregnant. Lying under the IV in the hospital, remembering her own mother's struggle, Kai prayed for strength. She gave birth to a healthy girl they named Leela. Silas, the protector, dropped to his knees. "I'm your daddy, and I promise I won't let anyone hurt you ever." He got up for Leela at night, cooked and cleaned. Langston began visiting every Sunday, bringing toys and reading Leela stories. He was atoning for his past silence. Kai realized the full truth of their victory. Family isn't blood. It isn't a shared last name. Family are the people who love you, who protect you, who choose you every day again and again. She forgave Mrs. Vance, not for her sake, but for her own, so she wouldn't carry that anger. They had lost Silas's family, the one he was born into, but they had found theirs, the one they built themselves. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.